Welcome back to our C++ journey. In this episode, we're going to talk about two things you will use all the time as a game developer, which are arrays and strings. Array lets you store many values under a single name, like a list of player scores. A string lets you work with text like player names, messages on screen, dialogue, and so on. We're going to start simple, and I will show you step by step how to declare arrays, how to access them, how to work with multi-dimensional arrays, and then how to use C++ string class. At the end, we will combine everything in a small example. Welcome to the Game Creator Accelerator. I am Tony Munoz. Like, subscribe, comment, share, and tap the bell. Each week, you will get Unreal tutorials, practical strategies, and a clear methodology that will inspire your build development career. Worried your responsibilities make it impossible? Visit Woolen.com to learn more about the Game Creator Accelerator Lifetime Mentorship. And let's book a one-on-one to see how it can help you. Link is in the description. Now let's get started. First, let's talk about one-dimensional arrays. Imagine you want to store 5 scores for a player. You could write 5 different variables like score 1, score 2, score 3, and so on. That works, but it becomes a nightmare as soon as the game grows. Instead, we use an array. An array is a fixed collection of elements of the same type. All the elements live next to each other in memory, and each one has an index like 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Let me show you with some code. I created a new C++ project, and it is an empty project, and I added the using namespace standard to make things easier for me and delete the rest. Now let's add a line to initialize an array. Let's say that this array is of type integer, and I want to call this array scores. To define the size of this array, I use brackets and set the size that I wish. Let's say that the size will be 5. This line says create 5 integers in a row. The valid indexes will be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Never 5. So keep in mind that the first element of an array will be the element in the position 0, and the last one will be the element in the position of the size of the array minus 1. Once we initialize the array, we can define values for every position. I use the array name, select the position where I want the value, and then assign the value. Let's say 10. I'm going to repeat this several times to create all the positions. Remember that the limit will be 4 because it's 5 minus 1, in this case 4. Let's say that the second will be 20, 30, 40, and 50. It can be anything else. Each time you see the scores something inside the brackets, you're talking about one of the boxes inside this array, the scores array. The next step is to read the value that we assign. For that, let's use cout and say first score scores 0 in a jump line. And now let's make a copy for this one and look for the last score, which in our case will be the number 4. And now let's play it. Now you can see the value of the first score, which is 10, and the last score, which is 50. 10 and 50. Important to mention, let's say that we add another cout for the value 5. And let's call this one after last score. And let's see what happens. Look that the compiler didn't provide an error, but when you run the program, you have this, which is obviously an error. It's not something that you are expecting from a code. This is your code out of control. It is something very important. The compiler will not stop you from writing the score 5, but that is out of bounds. That means you are accessing memory that does not belong to this array, and that leads to undefined behavior. Sometimes it works, sometimes it crashes, sometimes it corrupts your data. So always remember, if the size is 5, the last valid index is 4. If the size is n, the last valid index is n minus 1. Let's remove this line. This is the first way of initializing arrays, but there is also another one that I think is even more effective. Let's remove these elements here, and after defining the integer score and the size of the array, we add an equal, curly braces, and then define the values one after another, separated by comma. If we run this, we'll have the same result. Because of the order and fixed structure of the array, we can loop through their elements easily. Let me show you how. Let's use a for loop that starts in integer equals 0, no bigger than 5, and will increase by 1 every time. Oh, I forgot to mention the I here. Now everything's working. And let's present their values. Cout, scores, and let's link that to the value of the I. But I'm going to add an equal, and then the value of that score in the position I, and the usual end of line. Let's run. And here you have, well, the first two couts, which are the first score and the last one, and then we iterate through all the elements of the array and presented the score 0 equal 10, score 1 equal 20, and so on. So far, we created a one-dimensional array, but you can have a multi-dimensional array, which is a level up from the previous one. Let's present it with a scenario. In games, you often have grids, tile maps, boards, 2D levels. For that, we use multi-dimensional arrays. The most common one is a 2D array, which you can imagine as rows and columns, like a chessboard. Let's create a simple example of a 2D array for a level map. First, uncomment all these previous lines of code, and let's create the multi-dimensional array. In this case, I will call it level map, and the array will be 3 by 4. This creates a 3 rows and 4 columns array. Now let's add the values. The first row will be, let's say, 1, 0, 0, 1. The second row will be 0, 1, 0, 0. And the third will be 1, let's say 1, 1, 0, 1. We have an array structure that has 3 rows, and every row has 4 columns. The question is now, how can I access the values in this array? Well, you have to ask for the specific coordinate. Let's say integer value is equal to level map, and then the coordinate. This coordinate 0, 1 will be the row 0, which is this one, position 1 in column, which will be the first one. Well, sorry, which will be the second one, is the 0. I forgot for a second that the 1 position is the second element of the array. And now, if we do the cout for the value, let's see the result. It is 0, just as I expected. As a final exercise, let's say that we want to print the whole grid. In this case, we're going to use nested loops. I recommend you to stop at this point and trying to do it yourself. Don't worry, we're going to get to it. But it's a good practice for you. Now let's do it. We start with a for integer, let's call it, in this case, row, to be sure that we are first inspecting the rows, and then in every row we'll inspect the columns. The row has to be a maximum of 3 or less than 3, because it could be 0, 1, and 2. And then we add 1 to the row to go to the next one. With this, we assure that we will inspect all the rows, but just the structure of the rows. Now I want to see what is inside the columns. And I want to start with the first row and then inspecting all the columns, moving to the second row, inspecting all the columns, and so on. Again, I will add another for, but in this case, let's call it call for columns. I think you can imagine that. The value in this case will be less than 4 because we have 4 columns. And I'm going to increase the column by 1. Now let's say cout, level map, row, and call, and let's separate it with just one empty space. Why separate it with one empty space? Because this will give me the structure of the entire column. Once I finish the 4, I want to jump to another line, which will be the next row. And for that, I add a cout, next line. Let's run. Here we have a structure. Well, we start with a 0 because it is this cout, but then we have the 1001, first row, 0100, second row, and 1101, third row. The outer loop controls the row. The inner loop controls the column. You will see this pattern again and again when you work with grids. Now let's move to the other subject I want to cover in this lesson, string basics. Let's comment this. And now let's talk about text. C has an older way of handling strings using arrays of characters, but in modern C++, we prefer standard string from the standard library that you remember I added here at the beginning. To work with strings, we also need to include string. Then we can start creating strings. Let's close all these sections and let's create our string. Remember that if you are not using the standard namespace, you will have to add the std. But because I added, I can go directly to string, player name Tony. And now I can say cout, player name, and pass the string player name. Let's run. And here you have it, player name Tony, which was declared in the previous line as a string, player name equals to Tony. Now let's say that we want the user to introduce the name while the program is running. So we want to read the name of the user. In this case, we're going to use a standard that is called getLine. Let's comment this too and do the example. Let's create again a string called player name, but I'm not going to initialize it because I want the user to introduce the name. First, I will present the message, cout, enter your player name. Then getLine cin player name, and then another cout to give a welcome. Welcome player name. Let's test it. Here's the program. It's telling me enter your player name. Let's say that I am Tony Munoz and enter. Welcome, Tony Munoz. Perfect. The importance of using getLine cin instead of only cin is that the user can create an entire line using spaces, and this won't create any conflict. So that's why we use the getLine cin and then the variable that we're going to assign to whatever the user introduced. Even though we did this before, let me clarify this concept, which is concatenation in strings. Let's comment and present the case. Let's say that I create a string that is called first name equals to Tony, and another one, last name equal Munoz. And now I want to present them together. I can create another string called full name, which includes first name plus an empty space plus last name. And now I can use a cout to present the full name. A string provides other functions that are very useful. Let's comment this and present them to you. Let's begin with the string message that will say, hello, player. The functions that you can use are message size, which will give you how many characters this has. I mean, how many characters the string message has. You can also use the empty, which will be true if there are 0 characters. You can also use the message 0 like an array, and this will give you the first character. And you can also use, I forgot to use here. Okay, this was my mistake. And you can also use the message size -1 to know what is the last character of the entire message, or of the entire string, in any case that you didn't call it message other way. From here, you can see that in a certain way, message behave very similar to an array. It's like an array of characters with superpowers. You can iterate over both arrays and strings in a similar way. First, let's start with an index-based loop. Let's comment this to present the next example. You remember how we iterate through an array using the for, and we can check all the values in the score. We can do something similar with strings. Let's comment this out. Let's create a string name. Let's call it player1. And then I will use, for the case of the string, it's a force, and we'll start defining size t, or size underscore t, with I equal 1 to I less than name.size, which is the entire size of the string, and we'll move through every character adding 1. And now let's present it like a cout name I is equal name I and end of line. Let's run. And here you have all the elements. The first one is the player, the empty space between the R and the 1, and then the 1. In modern C++, we can also use a range-based for loop. This is a very clean way to say, go through every element of the array. And let me present it with 2 simple examples. First, I'm going to copy this score at the beginning, and I will move it to the bottom. And I'm going to copy also this string and moving it here, and comment this, or else I'm going to have some conflict. Remember that for integer scores, we use this system to iterate using the loop. But the new way can be for integer score in scores. Now you can do cout score end of line. Using this new approach, we don't have to manage the index manually. We just define an integer that will be of the type scores, and now I can iterate for every score inside scores and present the value. If you run it, you have the same result, 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. Same result as using this method. This one, much more elegant. Let's do something similar, but for the case of the string. Add a for, and in this case, we'll use the char or character inside name. And now we'll present every character, which is the C we defined previously, and then an end of line. Run. First, we have our scores, and then the player one character by character. Today, you took another step as a programmer and understanding an important concept like arrays and strings. As usual, try to practice yourself and get used to it because this tool will be essential in your career. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, comment, and remember, this is the Game Creator Accelerator channel and I am Tony Munoz. If you want to continue developing your career in video games, visit woolon.com and learn more about the Game Creator Accelerator Lifetime Mentorship Program. And let's have a one-on-one chat to discover if this program will help you become the game developer that you want to become. Until next time, keep creating, keep sharing, and most importantly, keep dreaming big. I'll see you soon, my fellow creators.